Hello everyone. Today we will learn about an introduction to the Huawei Data Center AR router product. First, let's start by understanding the Huawei AR G3 series enterprise routers from the previous section. So we generally refer to it as AR and it actually contains many series. AR150, AR160, AR200, AR1200, AR2200, AR3200, and AR3600, these series. In general, it is a new generation business router gateway device launched by Huawei, integrating functions such as routing, switching, wireless, voice, and security. So this is my AR-G3, which is an enterprise router, and this is an introduction to it. The Huawei AR500 series is an industrial router. It includes two series, AR531 and AR550. Therefore, it is introduced in the context of what we now call the Internet of Things environment. It is also a new generation industrial-grade router gateway device that integrates routing, switching, wireless, and security. So first of all, we need to have a basic understanding of the AR series routers. The goal of this lesson is to complete the learning process. We need to understand the positioning of the HCIA AR G3 router as one of its products. One of its hardware architectures, it is a commonly used module board, and a process of its data forwarding. Finally, one of its application scenarios. So this is one of the goals of this lesson. Everyone can take notes first. First of all, let's take a look at the positioning of the router. One of the positioning of the router, so this is the positioning of the AR router product. Just now it was also mentioned that the AR-G3 router combines switching and routing, voice security, VLAN, VPN, and other integrated functions are part of this new generation of router products. Speaking of routing, it means its rich access uplink port. It may have many access points. There are many mouths. Then in terms of voice, it can serve as a PBX. In this case, it can provide a rich variety of voice application services. Then this router, it can provide functions like a firewall. So it means that it is secure in terms of security. And then it can function as a VLAN. What can it be used for? It can serve as a wireless transmitter, router, then it's our VPN. Whether you are using IPsec VPN and then SSL VPN, MPLS VPN, all of these can be done. And then there is one more thing, exchanged. So it's mainly about adapting to what we are now, running in the tens of billions. Now we are in the era of 10 gigabit. Then there are over $10 billion, over 40 billion, even the development of an era reaching tens of billions. In this case, it is able to meet the development speed of our future in the coming years. So overall, enterprise routers of the ARG3 series, it has become Huawei's data communication, wireless access network, one of the fields in the core network and other network areas. It accumulates a piece of knowledge. It relies on an independent proprietary platform. We all know Huawei has this VRP platform. So it launched a solution for enterprises and branch offices, etc. Such new generation network products. So actually this router inside, it actually uses a multi-core CPU with a non-blocking switching architecture. In that case, it is with such technological advantages to meet the diverse application needs of our future business. Provides an integrated solution. So, as a customer, so I can trust such a product. So it can guarantee that my customers, after purchasing this product, to ensure the future of my business development. So AR is actually a type of routing gateway device. So it is generally located between our enterprise internet and external network. At the connection point, that is the internal network and the external network. This data is left with a single entrance. This point needs to be clear. So that means I can deploy multiple services on the same device. In that case, actually for my company, in the early stages, my company maybe, my investment costs have definitely been greatly reduced. And from the perspective of long-term operation and maintenance, because I bought fewer devices, so one of its operation and maintenance costs is definitely reduced. So users can actually, based on this is a planning judgment for my own business. So let's choose the corresponding AR series. I have so many products. Which one should I choose? So it is based on my specific business, a decision made by my own company. Let's have a simple understanding of this. Its product positioning is a router. We know what is being talked about now. No longer a traditional data center. Now it is the cloud data center. It is also said in the context of cloud computing, I am in the data center right now. There has actually been a change in its hardware as well. So this is the router for our AR aggregation. It can actually be summarized by the 3 letters ABC to describe one of its characteristics. So the characteristics of these 3 letters, it is actually an abbreviation for each of these English letters. So the first A stands for applications in one box. So it means the meaning of integration. I can deploy multiple applications on me in a machine in this way. I can reduce the TCO by at least 30%. So I have reduced this investment cost. And then there is also its better experience. So it provides a better experience. What does a better experience mean? In other words, my machine, it's about performance, a change. It has excellent performance to ensure zero interruption of my business operations. No interruption will occur. In other words, its stability, its reliability is guaranteed. There is also a cooperation platform. So it's a collaboration platform meeting the customized needs of a single application. So mainly introduce 3 points. Next, let's take another look. Let's take a look at my ARG3 router below. A family photo of it, the front has already comprehensively covered the Huawei ARG3 series, its router. All models are listed, so it's quite comprehensive. So in general, we can actually grasp it a bit. Actually, what does the explanation from bottom to top indicate? One of its characteristics is incrementally increasing performance. So the underlying layer is what we mentioned before, 150, 160, 200 series. So let's take a look. It is tailored to your enterprise. If it is less than 150 people, then you can use these series of. If there are 150 to 300 people, if it's a small branch, then I can choose the 1200 series, then go up between 250 and 600. Then I can choose the 2200 series. One level up is similar to the headquarters. Or to put it another way, a large branch. So we can, that is to say, more than 600 people. Then I can choose 3200 and 3600. These are more performance oriented. This excellent AR router, so everyone can take a look. There are actually so many models. There are actually many English characters behind. So let's give a brief introduction. Several English characters. For example, there is V, it represents my router. It supports voice control. What else? For example, W. So what did W say? It means it can be supported Wi-Fi. So what does G mean? It is an identifier. Just identifies that I can support 3G, the internet type can support 3G. What about the AR2200 and 3200 series? When I set up the device, if the DSP module is configured, then I can also support voice functionality. What about the AR3600 series? Not quite able to support it for now. This voice function, just a simple explanation for everyone, the entire AR series, a simple overview. So everyone knows all of my AR. I have integrated this VRP, a platform like VRP. So that's the end of the understanding. After its positioning, what we are about to see now is one of its hardware architectures. So the card module and so on. First of all, let's take a look. its product specifications, the logical architecture of the product. This is the Huawei AR 3600 series. Its key indicators. So let's take a look. So inside this table, in fact, the project listed many items. For example, its forwarding performance, SIC slots, then WSIC slot. This slot of XSIC. Everyone says according to the actual business needs, you can go for comparison. Check if these projects meet the requirements your business needs. Now let's take a look at the red section. What is this actually? Refers to this feature, some features. So in other words, its main control or board power supply, all are hot swappable. In this case, for your later operations and maintenance, it's very simple. And then there is also support for dual active hot backup. So it has dual control and it is hot backup. Then for one of my businesses, this stability, in terms of reliability, it has been very helpful in improving significantly. Moreover, it supports 3G USB data cards. It's the channel capacity of my whole machine. The channel capacity of DSP is 384, the maximum of the whole machine. Interface of 147 root Ethernet. Very much such Ethernet interfaces so everyone can. To 3600. Comparatively in business, you can compare it to one of his products. These parameters in the product manual, go to the corresponding search, then finish talking about 3600, about the 3200 series. So we can take a look here. Project. It's almost there when listed out. Actually compared to this 360, slightly in terms of performance, a bit better than the previous 3600. For example, on his memory and flash, maybe just a little less. However, some of his main advantages are, it's about the same, including this main control port card, power plug-in and plug-out. Then the maximum channel capacity of this whole machine's largest DSP, and this is the number of Ethernet interfaces, all remain unchanged. So it's a single interface card, so everyone can go and have a look. Then watched the previous 3200, 3600. So let me take a look at 2220, one of his key indicators. So here he listed it out. This is the 3 series AR2240 of AR2220 and AR2220L. So let's take a look. So in fact, its forwarding performance, it decreases sequentially starting from 240. So in fact, we can start from the diagram above. You can also see the two pictures. With this one above, from left to right, it's actually the size of his whole machine. It is decreasing in turn. The interfaces above are also decreasing in sequence. So it must be that caused him. This leads to a decrease in its performance. So this is some specific parameters inside it. I won't say more. So what everyone needs to understand is you can refer to the product manual for more detailed data. Here he just mentioned some of the main things, some of the main project data listed out for reference only. What about the whole series? He's in support hot swappable boards, for example. I have so many. These series, all these AR routers in the AR220 series. He always supports hot swap and 3G data card. Just everyone take a brief note of this then. This indicator below are a 2200 series. In other words, take a look at this. One of the product's performance lower than the previous batch, right? It needs to be lower. So actually, it is based on the requirements of your business. If you have few business operations, you bought too much, too big. Having too high performance is also a kind of waste. So choose a business that matches yours. So over here, this 2202 is connected to 2201 with Arch 48FE behind it. These two models were introduced after the VRR 3C003 version, a newly launched all-in-one model of a router switch. So here 48 means that this is my Ethernet port. He has a total of 48 ports. Can provide access, then their height is 1U, then support RPS. Let everyone have a little understanding of this. Take a look at this other one. This is a model of 2200. So in fact, there is not much to say. The main purpose is to let everyone understand the AR2200 series. In fact, one of his products is very diverse. Can take a look at many things so everyone can compare if there are any needs. Check out different product series. One difference among them. Let me explain. AR220X GE. GE port for electrical port, HCIA Data Center network. He's the whole GE. It is accessed through an Ethernet port. Then he's tall 1U. It is also at a height of 1U. So everyone can take a look at this. Then he wrote this 204E here. He is dedicated to the power supply. That means I am here. It may be the power company that supplies electricity to me. They generally use generally speaking, the models I just mentioned, the ones listed above. What are the usual targets for positioning? For example, some of our financial institutions and power industry, because these industries pay more attention to exchange capabilities. So you can take a look at one of his exchanger ports. Many of them just provide this amount of ports. It also supports a SIC enabled card, supplementing multiple types of an uplink access. I can provide a variety of options. Then the built-in is dual power supply. So with dual power supplies, it actually means that it can definitely enhance the reliability assurance for me. If I say that one power supply along the way is broken, I will definitely use another route to ensure that my business does not interrupt. So this is a power supply for PoE. After telling the story behind this photo, it's about my 2200 series. All my routers cover pretty much the same. It covers all of these routers of mine. Next, we will talk about a router from the 1200 series. Some key indicators of his. So actually, it can also be seen from the diagram. It's the 1200 series. He also has quite a variety of routers. One of its forwarding performance is also outstanding, decreasing in sequence, including one of his memories. Then this flash. These are all now it's less than a gigabyte. That is to say, meeting the knowledge needs of small businesses. For the same full range, it supports hot swappable 3G data cards on the board. So actually, no need to say more. Because of this and, in fact, this data. What is its main function? Mainly, it's about everyone. If in an enterprise, when deploying this router of ours, according to your own business needs, go to the corresponding place to find the corresponding product. Match your own business. Do you really need to match the performance provided by my router or not? Mainly through these data. Otherwise, these data of his are useless. After finishing this part, let's continue downwards. How many series are there? One is the 200 series. Next, we will talk about the 1600 series. Similarly, I won't talk much about these other things. What kind of data is this? I won't say much more. So the main thing is just mention this part marked in red. In other words, all the products in this series of mine, it's a dual core processor, flexible dual WAN uplink, are designed without a fan. Next, let's take a look at the AR160. So the same 160, he is all in. The entire set is interconnected. It means all our electrical ports support fixed upstream on one optical port. In other words, for the upstream, he can support some corresponding optical ports. So actually here there's quite a lot being discussed. So it mainly relies on everyone to look at it themselves. Only go to see when there is a demand. So here is one. This is the last one. AR160RWPM9. He mainly works on the design of our educational network. It serves as a multimedia gateway. That is to say, it is used in what situations when interacting with students in my classroom, and the resources of my campus network are easily accessible. This is mainly to mention the 160 series. So I have almost finished explaining all the series now, another 150. In fact, it's a concept similar to 160. Or it is to say that there is a dedicated router for him, maybe, that is applied in different scenarios like this. So in the end, now let's take another look. This is 160, 150, 200 in his logical architecture. So this picture is actually quite clearly outlined his hardware logical architecture. So in fact, what is the main architecture composed of? Take a look at the two main modules, CPU and LSW. LSW is our switching module. What is the CPU used for? He is the one who completes some complex calculations, then directly connected to the WAN port and through a data cable of GE connected to our LSW switching module. So the switching module, he just has some simple things in his head. Ethernet layer to 3, switching, data exchange. So this is actually the whole thing that looks like. The logical architecture here is still very clear. Next, let's take a look at this is 1200, 2200, 3200. His hardware logical architecture. So in this case, it might be a bit challenging for him. It just looks a bit complicated. Let's take a look at its logical architecture. Similarly, he has this CPU and one of his switching modules, these two major parts. See, on this basis, some additional elements have been expanded because my device needs to support SIM card. So when I was designing, pre-assign each slot, the bus interface is still reserved. So in that case, it can be supported. As for my voice data, I can support all these things. And then over here, in each slot, supports 3 types of bus. Here we can take a look at different line colors. One of them is GE 2.5G 10G. It is a 10G data bus TDM. It is the bus of voice. Anything else? I am in pink color, a management bus. So take a look here. Huawei has a DSP for data signal processing. Participate in it. In this case, he can greatly enhance my overall processing. A piece of data involves processing performance. And we have a switching fabric on our side. So that means one of his exchange matrices. So this can also enhance one of the processing performance of my equipment. So in other words, because as we just learned, 1200, 3200, the higher up, one of his performances, his overall performance improvement is very significant. In other words, higher than what we just talked about. 150, 160. This is definitely a capability that needs to be addressed. It's stronger. So one of his logics, the logical architecture of the hardware, is definitely going to be a bit more complex because he will add many different modules. Next, we are going to take a look at this router, one of his main control board and interface board, one of his physical forms, and so on. The characteristics of each product. First of all, this is one interface of one module of his. Let's take a look. First, let's take a look at this main control board. We will look at the interface later. Start by looking at the main control board. So, the main control board here lists many of these models. Parameters like SRU 40, 60, 80, 100, 200, and so on. So actually, the main control board has a unique difference. Everyone please take a look. It must be some kind of clock frequency performance of his. Certainly, the performance of CPUs varies. This will result in me having a different main control board, right? So here everyone can take a look. If I'm 40, the main frequency he used is 600 MHz. 600 MHz. So he has 8 cores. Moving on. When I was 8 years old, everyone can take a look. He has 12 cores and one of his main frequencies becomes 750 MHz. And then, that is one of his performances has improved, elevated. Then the main difference of this 40-60, actually the difference is not that big. What about 60 and 80? That difference, mainly in the TM function, one is the CPU that was just mentioned. He must have changed. And then his traffic manager at TM refers to the functionality of traffic management that I have. Supports one, not supported. And then the best one is SRU 200. One of its main frequencies reaches 1.2 GHz He has 32 cores. He also supports this traffic management. He said he supports traffic management, then he can provide several 10G SFP plus interfaces, right? And then this one still provides a set of 4 4G combo ports. So this mainly refers to the main control board of this. So based on its actual version, it means that the difference lies in the version of my software. He actually has some limitations. For example, in my AR2240 version, this SRU40, this controller board of his can only be used on AR2240. What about SRU80? It can only be used in my AR3260. It means that I am on a different version. In this specific series, I can only use a certain series of this model. For each model, this main control port. But later, after the version update, there is no such restriction anymore. Similar to the better compatibility he has, the better. What about SRU60? In fact, in the initial versions, he supports AR2240, this AR3260. This main control board, it's actually about this AR2240, a necessary single board for the AR3260 chassis. So generally, only mention that one can be configured. However, if we talk about reserving upgrade configurations, the reserved upgrade configuration needs to have the capability for dual main control. So AR2240, AR3260. He can choose from 3 types of main control ports. It's SRU40, JKT60, 80. He can choose either one. So these 3 types of main control boards, it also supports hot swappable maintenance. So the main difference is, on top of my forwarding performance and traffic management functions, the SRU40 main control board, he can provide a forwarding performance of 2 terabit. What about 60? Its forwarding performance is slightly better. It's 2.5 terabits. And then for port 80, it can provide a forwarding performance of 4 terabits. So they are all able to provide this TM, that is traffic management. Now let's look at another main control board. Just call it SRUX5. So its performance is superior. He has the ability to provide this 2.2 GHz frequency. So he has 6 cores. He also supports this management function. However, he has one flaw. He just doesn't support voice functionality. What do you mean by that? Generally speaking, I use this main control board, usually only used for my AR3670. Regarding my AR, I can do it. That is to say, specified. I need to use this main control board. Now let's take a look at mine. Other control boards, it has further evolved. These main control boards similarly, let's take a look. He is talking about building on some foundations, added some additional functions. Mainly, take a look at the functions on this side. What has mainly been added more? 4 GE optical ports, then support 2 GE combo ports, then 4 GE electrical ports, or on the interface, added some more. He is in the new version. These have been added. 3 of these main control boards. Similarly, some limitations. So, my temperature is 40 degrees Celsius. It can only be used on my AR2240. Inside this AR router, the same 100 billion, 200 billion can only be used in my AR2240 inside the AR3260. So, not all of them. The main control board can be used in various scenarios. Inside any model, there are some regulations on this. Then let's take another look. One type of board supported by ARG3. What about ARG3? He checks to see if he supports 4 types of interface cards. Actually, it has already been listed here. And what the specific appearance of their interface card looks like. So from top to bottom, one of his interface cards definitely need to be raised one by one. Let's talk about the capability of this interface. Relatively speaking, it is increasingly more. the number of interfaces is increasing. First, let's talk about the SIC interface card, then comes WSIC, then XSIC, then the final EXSIC interface card. So let's take a look here. There is one point to note here. It means I have two SIC interface cards, the slot. He could actually merge them. I can remove two SICs by flexibly splitting and pulling them out. After dismantling, it can be converted into a double width WSIC interface slot. In other words, two SICs can be combined into one WSIC. Moving on, I can go through. Everyone can take a look. I can add two more WSIC interface card slots. After the same split, then I can turn into a dual high XSIC card slot. So in fact, everyone is very vivid. This is WSIC. If I can stack them up and down in two layers, it has actually turned into such an XSIC interface slot. Then you can take a look at each slot. One of his switches has a capacity. So SIC and WSIC, he is operating on 2G. So XSIC and EXSIC, he has 2. This exchange capacity, well, it's very big. It has become 20G. After the slot merging, in general, after the new slot, it is to take inside these two combined slots. This one is relatively big. The bigger one, starting from this version, it means that my XSIC slot, you can insert a WSIC card. So this lower half inserted in the XSIC slot and then WSIC card, that is the WSIC card slot, still in the original XSIC slot. So this is just a simple interface card, a simple description of him and a relationship between them. They can actually be merged with each other. Then let's take another look. Card combination method. Here is a point to note. That is to say, what several boards after I combine them, I can merge. But can I dismantle it? Of course, it is not allowed. After I joined hands, once the agreement is reached, then I can't go and dismantle it anymore, so everyone can take a look. This is my entire hymn. Just now, what we were talking about, among these 4 interface cards, how are they? What kind of a one-to-one corresponding merging? Relationship, everyone can take a look. As I just mentioned, after I merge this slot, the new slot number, is there a slot number, right? Which one should I take? For example, I have 2 SICs, right? Synthesized WSIC. Which slot number should I choose? So I need to take these 2 SICs, 2 slot numbers. The previous one was quite big. So this is a small point to note. So this diagram is just said, what is he mainly? Card combination. Why does that card have? Why can you freely combine? So in fact, it means because it's like a splice, a modular. So that means because these are all standardized designs. So with a combination like mine, after flexible combination of various service cards, can it meet all my different business needs and can fully utilize the resources of my slot? In this case, to make the best use of these purchased slots. In this case, for my users, actually, it's also one. It represents a significant cost saving. Next, let's take a look at the WAN interface module. So here, this lists the 3 major modules. One of them is the SRC interface card of E1, then Ethernet, and the following synchronous asynchronous interface card below. So when you see E1, inside the SIC interface card, first write half of the port, channelized, E1, T1, PRIVE1, multifunction interface management, multiple interfaces in this module. So here is one E1F. One half is similar to, it looks like it's one half. What does it represent? It represents 1 port and 2 ports, 1 port and 2 ports. As for E1, this refers to my E1 interface. Then there is a PRI here. So this PRI is the primary rate interface. What does this represent? Indicates the basic group handling interface of ISDN. Everyone needs to pay attention to this. And then VE1. It's. What does it mean? It represents this voice. It can also be configured as VE1. Complete the processing of voice data fax signals. So these are all part of this interface module. So it's actually quite simple. Let me take a look at this Ethernet below. The SRC interface card of Ethernet is synchronous asynchronous regarding Ethernet. It has 2 ports and then 10G, 100G power port, Ethernet port, one interface module of WAN, and then port 1 GE combo. This WAN interface of Ethernet. So this corresponds to, on the picture, this is 2FE. In the case of 2FE, it's the checkpoint. Let's not talk about this anymore. And then GE is an electrical port. Then we take another look at this synchronous asynchronous SRC interface card. So on this port, enhanced the synchronous asynchronous serial port interface module. He mainly mentioned that he can support the following protocols, the above. Then next, it's something else. 4 of these interface modules say. So everyone can correspondingly take a look. For example, this ADSL2, then add our SIC. Interface card. What is his main focus? On one end, ADSL over POTS interface module. Next, let's take a look at 4 G.SHDSL. What about this interface card? This is about being able to single board can provide 4-way G.SHDSL. In that case, he can provide independent CPUs, meaning that it can provide an independent CPU and a managed interface. And then over here, passive optical network. So this is an AR router, EPOM GPOM. Dual mode is a hardware module. So in this way, he can cooperate with the main control board, supports 2-way POM, SFP uplink interface, and then the last one, CPOS. This interface is this C, he is just indicating this channelization. And then the POS. What does POS mean? Packet over SDH, and then 155 megabits per second. Means the rate of communication I can support is 155 megabits per second. This interface module, everyone is saying just get a basic understanding, and then there's 3G, My 3G and 4G LTE. One module of one interface of his. So everyone can see what we have here. Well, this is also based on different versions. The variety of cards he supports is also a bit different. So let's say version V200R05A, the 3 types he supports, it's 3G. 3G is with this LTE card. So over here, check what types he has. First of all, this is the first one, 3GHSPA+7. This single board is a module for accessing the 3rd generation mobile communication 3G network. During the 3G era, he is a form of SIC, can be used as an enterprise, main link or backup link, connect to our Intel network, complete including voice. It's to transmit our voice, video, wait for these data services, all are acceptable, and then the following 3GE VDO. So this single board is for CDMA 2000, Network Access Module. So it is installed in the SRC card slot of the device. So this is for the enterprise to be able to providing access to CDMA 2000 network services, complete the data, wireless high-speed transmission, and then the last one, 1LTEL. This is the single version, wide area network wireless high-speed access module. Similarly, it is installed in the SRC card slot of the device. Inside this slot, obviously, he can provide LTE for the enterprise. Is the network service correct? So, that means I can accomplish and be able to complete this data wirelessly. A transmission with a large bandwidth. He can provide a very high bandwidth. What about besides this? Users can also use the host's fixed USB interface. It's what we call this one of the 3G, a CAT, a module of the CAT. So this is a module of an interface for 3G LTE. And I will take a look at the Ethernet switch, a module of an interface on a switch. What about the interface modules for Ethernet switching? Similarly, he just divided into these categories. So let's first go and take a look at this WSIC interface card and XSIC interface card. So the main point is about this difference. What are the differences? It's just a different interface that he provided. So this WSIC interface, he provides 8 ports of 100 Mbps. He is one port of RJ45 and then one port is this gigabit. So he is this Ethernet link module, gigabit Ethernet. He supports the transmission of data line speeds at the second and third layers. Each port can adapt automatically. So he has 2 working modes as well. One is fully dual functional, one is semi-duplex function, 2 modes, and then XSIC, his interface card is 24GE. So this has 24 ports. He is all gigabit. Then he is an electrician. He also supports data transmission by multiplying 2 and 3. There are also 2 working modes. So this interface module, he can be installed in us, which series are included. First of all, he can be installed in our 1200 series, 2200 series. Slot positions of the AR tree, 260 series inside the WSIC slot. So among them, this WSIC slot of 200 and 204, it was not there at the beginning. So what do we need to go through? We know through WSIC what is he synthesized from? Obtain through the SRC slot to synthesize. Then this 24, this interface module. He is installed in 2220, 3 2s and a 0. And then 2240 XSIC slot of AR 3260. What was the status we were just talking about? WSIC slots, right? Similarly, for me, this 2220, he doesn't have this XSIC slot. So what do I need to go through? Is it through what we talked about today? Merge through WSIC slot. Then I can get my XSIC, right? So this is simple. Just talk about one of his interface modules. Next, let's take a look at its voice interface module. What about the voice interface module? There are 2 categories here. One is this analog voice. And then there is also this ISDNST voice. So what are the differences among these? If there are differences, let's briefly talk about them. Then you can take a look at one of his naming conventions. In fact, there are 4 FXS ports inside. Then one root FXO. So what does that mean? Speaking of this analog voice, he has 4 FXS ports with an access module for the FXO interface all the way. What does FXS mean? FXS uses a standard RJ11 interface directly through the telephone line to my ordinary telephone. Interconnected devices such as intercoms interact information through TRP ring line frequency changes. For example, provide scenarios like my phone ringing, alarm ringing, then the voltage at aborts and dial tone, all implemented through FXS. So FXO, he is the one who connects the secondary loop. So he is using telephone lines, connect my local call to PST. This is known to everyone, public switched telephone network, right? And then, or it could be the small scale user, this switch. Similarly, it is also through the TRP ring line. The operation of this frequency changing runs my information interaction. So for the FXO port device can only be connected to devices with FXS ports. This is one of his best points. Then this SDN interface card. On one end, let's take a look at this end above. ISDN data access module. What he achieved is my ISDN. His one data stream is processed together for transmission and reception. Then there is the ISDN Cloud Access Module for the second port. He implemented the cloud signal. It's about access compression and decompression on the data, a communication network. So this 2BST, it's an interface module for AR, router ISDN services. Provided the dual ISDN data user interface that we just mentioned for the two routes. So this is what we call the ST port. He undertakes cloud services. Now let's talk about our interface module that we just discussed. Now let's take a look. AR's power and fan modules. So relatively speaking, this is still quite basic. Now let's take a look at its power module. His different series, his power modules are naturally different too. So let's take a look. AR1200 series. His power module is 54 watts rack mounted AC power supply. Then what about the properties of his module? He is fixed on the box body. So the way of connection is that it does not need to connect separately. Once he is fixed on the chassis, he does not need another connection. Then, how is the maintenance done? It's with the equipment replacement maintenance of the whole machine. And then next 2220 and 2240. So what are the main differences in its power module? Because according to his model, the increment tends to increase each time. His performance and so on are all increasing. His energy needs are also, gradually rising. Let's take a look from 150 amps, then 350 amps, then 700 amps. So this is his power module. So he is using alternating current from 2240 to 3670. He can maintain all the methods. This is plug and play. So it is more convenient for him to maintain it. So here also provides this point. This is what one of his power modules looks like. And then this host, these models of hosts, just mentioned these models of this host. Like those three hosts, he is all about supporting redundant power supply modules. In other words, my host machine will come with a built-in AC power module by default. If redundant power supply support is needed, another power module needs to be configured. If you need this redundancy, then you need to add another one. Ensure the reliability of this service for me. So here are a few things to note. This still looks simple. There are a few points to note. Everyone needs to be aware. The first thing is to talk about me. We cannot say, is this AR200 series correct? I'm using this 350 amps, it's saying that the power module doesn't match. You cannot mix to use. It was originally your 150 amps, so you have 350 amps now. In that case, due to mismatch, there is a high possibility of directly penetrating your device. The current directly pierces through you. Another thing is that after my power module loses power, I can go to plug and unplug. You can't say you're charged and go. If you just want to plug and unplug, there is a high likelihood of some danger occurring. Moreover, they said, when this AR router is powered off, first you need to turn off all the power module switches inside your device. After turning off the power module switch first, you go and disconnect the power from the mainframe. Overall, this electricity. So this is some information about the power module, some of the main points to note. Then take a look at the external PoE power supply of the 1200 series. External PoE power supply. What about the AR1200 series? What about his host? He comes with 8 LAN interfaces with F1. So among them, he's just saying 8 words. There are 4 ports in total with 8 ports. It supports PoE power supply. Power supplied via Ethernet cable. If you want to support this PoE power supply, you need to use this AR1200 series. The host comes with its own PoE power supply. Interface connected to an external PoE power module. This means you need to connect an external power module to achieve power supply for my PoE. That's PoE, one of his power modules, it's 90 volts. AC input power supply to 264. So naturally, the cooling conditions can affect its output. It's just about 48 volts. So the power consumption is around 100 watts. Then finished talking about this power module. Now let's talk about this fan module. Everyone knows what the fan is used for. Certainly used for heat dissipation, right? Because of this router of mine. Actually, that's one too. This calorie intake is actually quite high. So the AR1200 and AR3200 series, one of his radiators. What kind of airflow is this for cooling? In other words, how do I achieve heat dissipation? Everyone can actually understand this picture very clearly. What is his cooling channel like? It's the left and right wind deflector. So from my side of this router, I'm working on this fan, just suck this wind away, and then cool air. You are in a data center. You have air conditioning. You release the cold air from the air conditioning unit. After the cold air is sucked in, take you away. In the future, the heat on this electrical component then dissipate the heat from the air outlet. So this is, now in the following two diagrams, it is the A2240 fan module and the AIR3600 module. He just wants to take a look at the fan. Actually, this fan, there's just not much more to see. Actually, it's the same as what we usually have. In general, if this single fan fails, this device, the fever is very severe, exceeding the normal state, then you need to immediately replace the entire fan module. For example, if your fan is broken, right? But with the continuous increase in workload, it was found that I can't bring down this temperature, then you have to replace the entire fan module. Everyone needs to pay attention to this. Then I need to check some of the interfaces I often use. And the line is connected. Now that means what we call this router, some of his interfaces, and which cables he used for deployment. First of all, Ethernet port. The Ethernet port, that is, its form is RJ45. That's our usual ordinary network cable. What speed can he reach? The PPT specifies 10M, 100M, 1G. Then his link type protocol is an Ethernet protocol. So the card is some of the cards we talked about before. So what can Ethernet cables actually achieve? To achieve a connection between my devices. So the most important thing is, between my devices, is this communication correct? Network communication is all achieved through physical medium cables. So this is an Ethernet port. It's just the ordinary cable that we commonly refer to as this network cable. So recently, always talking about fiber optic communication, right? So it's using optical ports. So its transmission medium is our optical fiber. Fiber optics are divided into single mode fiber and multi-mode fiber. What about the speed? His speed is much higher than our Ethernet port here. Usually, yes, here it writes 100 megabytes. Then the larger one goes to a G. So his typical blade card, it's our main control board link protocol Ethernet. Then there is also the 1GEC, this interface. So these two written below are the ones we will actually use. One of them is what we used to call the network cable connector. So his network cable connector is different from our power socket. He is the LCPC connector for this dedicated fiber optic. Then, for this interface module is different from our Ethernet port now. The network cable interface here is different. He has a dedicated optical interface module. It's what we will use in fiber optic communication. So as we just mentioned about the cables, there are multi-mode and single mode. So what are the differences? Actually, we can differentiate by color. So many multi-mode fibers. It's usually an orange color. Then, if using single mode optical fiber, usually yellow. Of course, if you are using a different line, single mode and multi-mode, so the module you need is different. For example, if you are multi-mode fiber, then you must use the multi-mode fiber optic interface. This multi-mode optical interface module. So if you are if we use single mode fiber. So what he needs is our single mode fiber optic cable. Now let's take a look at which interface? This T1 interface. So this interface in the form of one of his interfaces DB9. In other words, the type of his interface has changed again. So what about his line? Is the trunk cable? What about his speed? It's in this 2.048 megabits or 1.544 megahertz, such a rate. So what about one of his link protocols? It's no longer the Ethernet protocol we used before. He's now using this PPP protocol, or it could be the HDLC protocol. So these two diagrams, everyone can go and have a look. One is 75 ohms, then the one below is this 125 ohm one. And this one is E1, 120 ohms, and T1. 100 ohms balanced dual foot cable. What about his card? It's what we talked about before, these cards. So E1, where are his cables? It can actually be divided into the above 75 ohms unbalanced coaxial cable. So about this connection relationship, on one side of my equipment, it's a DB9 connector. And then next time everyone can take a look, he actually has two heads. So he is two BNC connectors. Then I have 120 ohm balanced dual foot cables. What is his relationship? One side is what? Take a look. One is DB9, right? And then there is another one. This is an RJ45 connector. It's connected to the network cable. This interface is somewhat similar. Next, let's take a look at this XDSL. So, in terms of its interface form, it's RJ11, RJ45. There are two types of this category. This is just our usual ordinary telephone line. All use such an interface. So his speed, also from low to high, the lower one is 5.696 tera. The height has this 24 megabytes. Then his link protocol, it's our analog modulation and demodulation, because he needs to process the voice signal, convert it into our digital signal, right? There is a process of simulating modulation and demodulation. So these cards, this ADSL has one of these interface cards. We have discussed this before. So this is the diagram 4G.SHTSL. His line is like this. So let's take a look. He's one of his constructs. Then one side of his device must be. On this side, there is a connector with 4 RJ11 connectors. For example, when you connect to our telephone, right? And then what is his other segment? It's a connector for our RJ45. Well, everyone, just distinguish it. Next, let's take a look at this synchronous asynchronous serial port. This is our serial port. Then there are more forms of interfaces. He is DB28. It just indicates that he has 28. One of his lines is DCE-DTE. His speed is not very high. So from as low as 64K, it can go up to nearly 2.048 megabits. So one of its protocols is a flow protocol. So a typical card for him is 1SA. Everyone can take a look at this line. Actually, he still has quite distinctive features.